This is lesson number 4 in a series of 8 lessons on techniques for creative living. And the title of the lesson this evening is How to Stop Comparing and Competing. Probably the 2 activities of the mind that should go to the top of the loser's list are the 2 activities of comparing ourselves with other people and competing with other people. Now, I know that when I indicated to you that being in competition with other people was a major erroneous zone in your life, that you probably were shocked, because in our environment, in our system, we've been led to believe that to be highly competitive is a mark of success. I hope in the next 45 minutes to be able to convince you that there is a better way. But first, I would like to ask you a series of 4 questions, and if you answer yes to any one of them, you have a problem. Number 1, do you use words like normal and average to describe yourself? Number 2, do you strive to be like everybody else so that you will fit in? Number 3, do you find yourself jealous over the accomplishments of others? Well, maybe not jealous, but sometimes when a very talented person that you know succeeds, do you wish that you could succeed like that and somehow feel left out or put down by their success? Does their success have a tendency to immobilize you? Well, how about this one? Do you sometimes wish that you looked like someone else whom you believe to be more beautiful or attractive than you are? Gotcha. Some of you weren't so sure about the first 3, but that 4th one. One of my great joys is to watch women watch women. Now, if you think men follow the movements of a lovely lady when she walks into the room, I want you to pause and look around and watch other women watch her. And watch their computers go to work to measure, evaluate, compare. And more often than not, the comparison is one that leaves the eye of the beholder cast down with disappointment about themselves in comparison. It takes a great deal of self-confidence for people to begin to consult their own internal resources to begin to determine what they want to do or to be. You see, when we don't have very much self-esteem, we use the only standards that are left available to us, and that's comparisons with other people. If we don't know who we are, if we have no strong central identity, then we evaluate ourselves, we measure ourselves, we judge ourselves, we score ourselves on the basis of how we see others, how we think they are. There's a tendency for us to measure our insides by their outsides. Now, if you want to get out of this trap of constant comparison of other people, it's important that you begin to develop a strong belief system about yourself, and then even that's not enough. It's important that you begin to implement some techniques that will help you to step out of this entrapment, and this lesson tonight will perhaps give you some reasons why it's necessary to let go of this old system of comparison and the resultant competition that develops, but also to give you some idea of how to change your thinking in certain very personal and important ways. But first you have to see that it's impossible to be like everyone else and still be your own person. Now, Ralph Waldo Emerson understood this perhaps better than most of the great writers. Have you ever read his essay on self-reliance? It came to me just at the right moment when my life was changing a number of years ago, and every time I pick it up, I am inspired. Emerson wrote, "Whoso would be a man or a woman must be a nonconformist. He who would gather immortal palms must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore if it be goodness. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind." Now those are powerful words, but they're not the most popular of sentiments. You see, nonconformity is by definition not sanctioned by the majority of people. You see, it's the majority who sets the standards to which everyone conforms. So if you don't follow or fit in with those standards, then you become a nonconformist, and that is a threat and becomes unacceptable. Now, blatant nonconformity, simply for its own sake, is a disease that is almost worse than death. So I'm not talking about that kind of nonconformity, but it's certainly important to look closely at yourself and at your own very personal aspirations and begin to understand and appreciate the absurdity of running your life on the basis of comparison to others, and also on the basis of what others have told you from the beginning that you should be and that your life should be like. And almost everyone in this room has come into a stream of thought in which we have been molded and guided along the way. You see, there are people who have been interested in having you be as they are, or as they want you to be, so that they will be comfortable with you. And those people will repeatedly remind you of how you're doing in comparison to other people that they know, and usually you're not doing very well. And if their first example doesn't work, they'll select someone else to compare you with to really prove that you're not doing so very well. And usually this is an attempt to control you. Now, a word about nonconformity. Some so-called nonconformists are the greatest conformists that I've ever seen. For example, have you ever seen a person get caught up in a group of nonconformists who express their disapproval of conformity by setting out to become the exact opposite of whoever or whatever it is that they're not going to conform to? And they will show their nonconformity by the extreme way that they dress or don't dress, and by the way they speak, and usually they cuss a lot. They begin to adopt a new code or model of conformity, of behavior, and God hath mercy on any one of their members who fails to conform. If you join a group of nonconformists, look out when you don't conform to their nonconformity. Did you follow that? Our society and our culture is composed of people, each unique in himself or herself, who all too often are threatened by anyone who is different. You see, differences disturb people, but don't let differences disturb you or retard your development as a person. On this earth, conformity is not the safe path to follow, even though it appears to be, because eventually conformity will bring you down to that dis-ease of the soul. Conformity will leave you into the stagnation of your spirit. You are a dynamic creation, and you were never ever intended to settle down into anything. You are motivated to move forward into the expression of that unlimited pattern that is within your own spirit. And it is to that spirit that we must conform and to nothing else. But strangely enough, if you're conforming to your spirit and I am to mine, there's no conflict. And we're both moving in the same direction. And we can hold hands every step of the way. But it will not be me conforming to you or you to me, but to the one Spirit. Think of all the great people in history who have impressed you. Or think of those people that you have personally known who have helped change your life for good. And invariably it was their uniqueness, their unusual qualities that made them great. Whether it was a Jesus or a Socrates, a Gandhi, a Churchill, pick your own examples. Those people were usually scorned in their own lifetime for their crazy individualism and deified later on when it was conveniently safe to do so. Remember the many times when Jesus was comfortably settled down speaking to the people in his world that were not so well positioned, and the people who were considered to be the elite said, "What's wrong with him? Does he not know who they are?" You see, people believe that life is the way it is, and that they are the way they are, and nothing can be done about it. And that simply is not the truth. There is so much that you can do to change yourself and your life that I'm sure that there's not one of us here who really believes, even now, how much growth and change is possible within this very hour, within this period of time that we now occupy. But first, let's remember that within you there is an infinite, undeveloped, unshaped potential. But by continuing to compare your outer appearance or accomplishments against others' outer appearances or accomplishments, you tend to freeze or to crystallize that unlimited potential into the forms that you have currently demonstrated in your life. This is what happened to Lot's wife, that crystallization. Now, this is a major reason why people experience static, unchanging, undeviating, dull lives when they were created to have dynamic, continuously changing, powerful, energetic lives. And your spirit knows this. You know within yourself that you are supposed to be an exciting, dynamic, ever-changing individual. Let's see what the word compare means. It's defined as to represent as similar, equal, analogous. But most people don't compare to observe similarities. Have you noticed that? They compare to observe the differences. And usually by our comparisons of things, we put ourselves on the low end of the scale and others on the high end of the scale. The word compete means to strive or contend with another, to vie. And in time, if one lives their life by making comparisons, the end result will ultimately be competition. And you'll find that you will develop rivals. A rival is a person who attempts to equal or surpass another person, a competitor. And that's not what we want to be. The word emulate means to strive to equal or excel. And that is not exactly the idea, because emulate also has another definition: to reproduce those same qualities or attributes in myself. I would like to emulate you. That does not mean to be as you are. That means to see the excellence that you are demonstrating, and to have a desire to demonstrate that same excellence in my own life, not to compete. Absolutely not. The word example means someone or something worthy of imitation or duplication. A model, a pattern, a sample. It comes from the Latin word meaning something to take out or to lead out. And the word model means to make conform to a chosen standard. And the word chosen is the key word there. Probably the most important thing that has happened to me in my life has been the ability to enjoy, to appreciate, and to be comfortable in the presence of people who could do things better than I could. To learn to not compare myself to them in a way that diminished me, but to be inspired by the standard that they had established, and to want to measure myself by that same standard. And I ask you, what are your measurements? What are your standards? What are your ideals? The word ideal means an ultimate object of endeavor, a good and honorable or worthy principle or aim. It also means exciting only in the mind. You and I have minds that are goal-seeking mechanisms. We are always reproducing the standards that we have established for ourselves. Consequently, it's important to always be measuring up, upgrading our standards. And how can we do this unless we begin to observe, not so much to compare, but to begin to see and in life that which we want to be, and to let that become a pattern that the mind begins to move forward to experience within ourselves, within our own minds. Each one of us must have a prototype, an original pattern, if you will, that we would follow by choice. I would like to share with you some of the scroll marked 4 from Ogmundino's The Greatest Salesman in the World. I am nature's greatest miracle. Since the beginning of time, never has there been another with my mind, my heart, my eyes, my ears, my hands, my hair, my mouth. All men are my brothers, yet I am different from each. I am a unique creature. Within me burns a flame which has been passed from generations uncounted, and its heat is a constant irritation to my spirit to become better than I am. And I will. I will fan this flame of dissatisfaction and proclaim my uniqueness to the world. Henceforth, I will capitalize on this difference, for it is an asset to be promoted to the fullest. I am nature's greatest miracle. Vain attempts to imitate others no longer will I make. Instead, I will place my uniqueness on display in the marketplace. I will proclaim it. Yes, I will sell it. I will begin now to accent my differences, hide my similarities. You are nature's greatest miracle. You have within you the capacity to grow and to change and to become like that which you establish as your ideal. as your goal, as your objective, as your standard. Now, once you have gained the acceptance of your uniqueness, then you're ready to give up the destructive art of self-comparison. Do you understand that? You see, if we think that we are what we are and that we're stuck with it, and someone else has got something that is better than what we've got, that's where the negative comparison begins. But suppose that what you see becomes a source of inspiration and that you can move toward it, not toward that outer thing, but within yourself, that you become motivated to grow and to change. And then that very presence that a moment before caused your mind to be depressed suddenly becomes a source of inspiration. Probably the reason that we're so excited with each other here in the consciousness of the experience that we share is that every time we see each other, we can measure the change of that other person and they of us. I'm excited about you because I never ever expect to find you the way you were the last time you were here. Is that true? You're doing something about yourself, and I love it. That does not threaten me. That excites me, that motivates me, that gives me the energy to become more of what you are. And yet it is not what you are, it is what my own spirit is and always wanted to be. Now, once you have discovered your uniqueness and the capacity of your mind to grow, then you become face to face with the fact that you have very likely become highly adept at the self-comparison game. You've been playing that game for a long time. Comparison vision dictates most of our judgments. For example, how do you know that you're intelligent? Well, by those tests that have always compared us to a standard, and that standard was other people. How do you know if you're stable? Attractive, worthy, happy, successful, fulfilled? It has usually been by what we've observed from other people, by checking other people out. Well, this self-comparison game is deadly because you will find that you are always controlled by something outside yourself which you in turn cannot possibly regulate. And we want to give up all outer controls. Now, if the only thing that I need to change is me, suddenly I'm home free. You see, you are a unique person. And you couldn't be like all those other people if you tried. As a matter of fact, you can't be like one person. How could you possibly be like all of them that you and I have judged ourselves by? Now, when you've made some progress in eliminating your own destructive self-comparisons with other people, then you're ready to go to work on the even more destructive art of allowing yourself to be compared or judged by other people. And you may find it a much tougher assignment than working strictly on your own mind. Now, in many cases, probably most cases, it's perfectly all right for you and me to be treated just like everyone else. For example, if we are in the line at the restaurant waiting to be seated, we each take our place in that line and we're seated in turn. But suppose that someone comes in who knows the manager of the restaurant and goes to the head of the line. You know, I don't like that so pretty good, do we? No. Or suppose that while you're being seated, that the waitress has her eye on the table back in the corner in the shadows. And you wanted to sit by the window so that you could look out upon the surrounding scene. At that point, you may have to state your case because you don't want to be treated by a predetermined pattern that was in someone else's mind. Let me give an example of what I'm talking about. In a recent issue of Time magazine, the story is told of how Joe DiMaggio once went in to ask for a raise. He said, after my 4th season, I asked for $43,000 a year. And my general manager told me, young man, do you realize that Lou Gehrig is a 16-year veteran and he's playing for only $44,000? Did you follow that? He was being judged or compared by another person. And what difference does that make? Each one of us should be and could be and will be judged by our own performance, but frequently we'll have to insist upon it. This kind of comparison is used to put you in your place. How dare you think you're worth this much? Someone who's been around twice as long isn't even getting that much. And unless you're careful, your mind will say, oh, I'm sorry. I wonder why I asked for that small increase. Emerson once said, every individual nature has its own beauty, and each mind has its own method. A true man never acquires after rules. These person-made rules. Oh, rules, yes, universal laws. We're dealing with laws, but not necessarily with rules. Or especially when those rules tend to compare us with other people in order to control us. Now, the most destructive comparison is not being compared with someone else. You'll never guess what it is. The most destructive comparison is when we are compared or judged by how we used to be, to my former self. I can give you an example that you will understand. When I began to make major changes in my life, when I really was becoming a different person, some of the important people in my life did not want me to change because it threatened them greatly. And they would not let me forget how I had been. As a matter of fact, some of them still remember how I was. They do not know me now at all. If you begin to change, and I can give you several scriptural verses that will confirm this, but I don't need to do it. When you begin to change, all hell breaks loose in your life. And I can tell you this. In a room with this many people, there's more than a half a dozen people here tonight that if certain people knew you were here, all hell would break loose. What are you doing that for with those people? You do understand, don't you? Yes. And when you begin to change, there will be people that will never let you forget. And that's okay as long as you do not make that comparison yourself. As long as you do not judge yourself in this hour or any future hour by the goofiness that you demonstrated in the past. And there's not one of us here who has not deviated from the norm in the past in a way that gives others this opportunity and this power over us. Weak people like power so that they can manipulate others. The last 2 or 3 years I've been watching a lady who is a school crossing guard at an intersection between 2 stoplights on a street that I travel on the way to our apartment. Now, I don't see her very often. Sometimes once every 2 weeks. Sometimes maybe not for a month or two, and then maybe 2 or 3 days running. 2 years ago, I noticed a strange thing. I could hardly believe my eyes. Now, the street lights, the traffic lights on that street are set in such a way that the cars that approach them stop. And when the lights turn green, there is a sudden movement toward that one street that the lady crossing guard that I'm talking about occupies. I have actually watched her on numerous occasions stand there and sort of accumulate children. There's no traffic going across the street, and so she will tend to hold them back until the lights at that corner and this corner turn green and the cars begin to approach. When the traffic approaches, she will step out into the middle of the street and hold up her hands. Strange, I could not believe it when I saw it. I've observed it so many times that I know that it's a pattern with her. Because there's power. You can stop the traffic. Now, once or twice I've thought, now, what would she say if I got out of my car and walked over to complain? You know what I think she would say? Everybody else stops. Nobody else complains. What's the matter with you? Don't you like children? You see, as usual, the inference is to another thing, appealing to an absurdity. Of course I like children. But it's rather strange when someone stops the traffic in that particular manner. How often have you heard the expression, why aren't you more alike? And if the first one doesn't work, in a little while they'll pick out someone else that why aren't you more like, and finally they'll really push your button. And you'll begin to wonder, why am I not more like? There must be something wrong with me. And I know you've heard, well, no one else is complaining. It's a perfectly wonderful place. You're the only one that's complained. Golly, must be something wrong with you. How about this one? You should be satisfied with what you have. This clever little comparison is usually accompanied by something like, your grandparents never had anything. And what about those starving children in lower Mesopotamia? Well, of course you should be grateful for what you have, but not satisfied. I am so grateful for the good that exists in my life that sometimes I cry. I really do cry. Tears, real tears of gratitude. But do you think I'm satisfied with my life as it is? How can my restless spirit ever be satisfied? Because if I should ever become satisfied, I would settle down at that level and my progress would cease. Don't ever become satisfied. Now that's not saying become dissatisfied. No, grateful. But always moving forward into the larger good and the higher expression of life that you're capable of. What about this one? Whose idea is it that you're doing this thing that you're doing? Meaning it's a terrible idea. Whose idea is that? That's a way to control you. They want it this way. They don't allow that. That's the way they do things here. And here's the one that controls us more than any other. This is what God wants. There are many people who believe that they have special pipelines to God about you. They're not so sure about themselves, but they know what God wants you to do. Are you aware that religion has taken upon itself the task of controlling the lives of all of us? And that never was to be the responsibility of religion. Religion is to inform and to inspire and to motivate and to tell you of your higher nature and give you systems and techniques for establishing your conscious contact with spirit. But somewhere back in the dark ages, long ago before that, perhaps, religion took upon itself the idea of regulating life. And when it does, it always boxes you in, and the moment that you deviate a bit, then you are, quote, a sinner, unquote. The word sin merely means missing the mark of your fulfilled goodness. But are you aware that people who try to control other people's minds always use fear and guilt to cause you to conform? Have you noticed that? And the questions and that are asked, the control that is given is always done in a way that will cause you to react from guilt or fear. And then you can be controlled. You can put back into your place. Decide right now that you're going to stop letting people cause you to be afraid or to feel guilty. Fear and guilt go to the top of the loser's lists of self-destructive behavior. Now, here are some techniques that you can use when confronting people who are trying to control you by comparing you with others or in whatever way that they're trying to arouse a feeling of fear or apprehension or guilt in you. In other words, people are trying to get you to do what they want you to do. In any confrontation where someone is trying to take charge of your mind by using comparisons, refuse to be upset. Refuse to be upset. For example, do not take it personally. Remember that they would do and have been doing the same thing with other people. Stop taking it personally. And the moment that you do, you'll feel that your mind is coming back into your own control. You can also reverse the strategy on those people. Say to them, for example, if it is the service attendant at the garage, and you've complained because your bill was too high, and he told you of the little lady that had her car fixed there last week, and she didn't complain. You can say, well, I'm glad you mentioned that little lady last week who didn't complain, because I want to tell you about the mechanic I met last week who charged less than you do. Or, if you keep telling me I should be a fashion model like Cousin Liz, then I'm going to tell you that you should be as generous with me as Uncle Harry is with my Cousin Liz. Because she has had his total support and I have not had yours. Or whatever it is at that moment that reverses the role. Don't let them put it on you. Put it right back on them. But don't do it from anger. Learn to step out of the control that other people have been placing on your mind. Now, stop yourself from dealing with people who will control your mind the moment that you recognize that they're unwilling or unable to help you. For example, if you are talking to a doctor or an attorney, an IRS agent, a clerk in a store, at some point in that experience, you will know, intuitively know, that they are not going to help you anymore. You understand what I'm saying? It suddenly runs out. Now, the tendency for us is to continue to try to get their assistance. The moment that you know that you don't have their attention, or that they're not going to help you, then stop and back away and thank them very kindly for the assistance that they have given you. And if it's the clerk in the store, you can ask for the manager, the next person up the list. If it is the doctor whose ability to help you and whose desire to help you if you've lost that person's attention, just thank the doctor and step out of the office and Get an appointment somewhere else. Don't be offended by that experience. But stop dealing with people who are not going to be involved in your life. If you're trying to help someone else and they don't want to be helped, the moment that you realize that they don't want to be helped, stop it. It may be a conversation on the telephone, but back away and make your total separation from that person. Stop turning yourself over to people. If you're dealing with someone, ask yourself, what do I want from this encounter? Did you ever go to a hardware store to get a garden hose and leave with a lawnmower? Have you spent your life doing what other people want you to do? Well, what do you want to do? What do you want out of each situation that you're experiencing? If you really would like to gain a measure of control over the events that are unfolding, I can tell you an almost surefire technique that will work. It will work almost every time, not quite. Make people feel good. Make people feel good. If you're stepping into a taxi cab, step into that cab with the idea of doing or saying something that will make the driver feel good. The most ornery person that you're going to have to deal with in the course of a day is almost powerless in your control if you tell them how nice they are before they have a chance to open their mouth. Isn't this a marvelous day? And golly, I'm so glad I bumped into you. I'm so glad that you are the waitress that's serving this table. You will get some special attention. And it will be real because it will come from your heart to their heart. Make sure that you select something that is true, real, that you're speaking from. But make people feel good. If there is a certain person in your life who habitually tries to control your mind, pick a time when you're not upset about their unacceptable behavior and discuss it with them. Ask them to work on it. Don't do it when you're angry, because if you do, then that will only prove to them that what they thought about you was right in the first place. But in one of those neutral moments, ask them to stop doing whatever it is that they need to stop doing. And at the same time, tell them what you're going to do if they don't stop. Now, that's not a threat, that's a promise. And then if they do it again, do what you told them that you were going to do. It might be that you're going to pour a glass of water over his head. Do it. Select something that will give them a conscious shock. It can be a very simple thing. You tell them, I'm going to step on your toe. I'm going to kick you in the shin. Or I'm going to write a letter to my congressman. It doesn't make any difference what it is that you do. Make up your mind that you're going to do it, and then do it if that person does it again. Does this mean that you're a nasty person? Absolutely not. You can do it with a smile on your face and have more fun than you've had in 6 months. Because you're taking away the control that another person has had over you and over your life. Now, it's exceedingly important, though, if you're going to stop other people from controlling you, that you catch yourself when you try to control other people. And that's your assignment this week. Stop playing games controlling other people's minds. As you break out of one very bad pattern with one person in your life who's been playing games with you. Will you do that? If you will, I promise you this will be one of the most exciting weeks you've ever had. Albert Einstein once reported, great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. It's true. If you've decided to move forward through a series of changes, you're going to run into some opposition. Now, welcome it and become excited about it and develop the techniques, your own personal techniques, to change the control that certain people and conditions have had over you. Become your own hero or heroine. Don't ever expect to be like anyone else. You can never be exactly like anyone else. Use the strong people in your life as examples to live by. But remember, as Agmandino said, that I am better equipped in both mind and body than all the emperors and wise men who preceded me. My skills, my mind, my heart, and my body will stagnate, rot, and die lest I put them to good use. I have unlimited potential. Nevermore will I be satisfied with yesterday's accomplishments. I can accomplish far more than I have, and I will, for why should the miracle which produced me end with my birth? Why cannot I not extend that miracle to my deeds of today? I am nature's greatest miracle. I am not on this earth by chance. I am here for a purpose, and that purpose is to grow into a mountain. In the past, I have not considered this fact, but it will henceforth shape and guide my life. I am nature's greatest miracle, and nature knows not defeat. Eventually, she emerges victorious, and so will I. And with each victory, the next struggle becomes less difficult. I will win. I will become great, for I am unique. I am nature's greatest miracle. And that's the way it really is for you. God bless you.